right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 2015 Invasive Plants webinar. We've got a really great turnout tonight. I was astounded by how many people signed up. I'm really excited, and we're really looking forward to having you all here with us. My name is Chris Crawford. I'm a project associate here on the PlantRight project, and I'm joined here by my colleague Greg Richardson, who's PlantRight's project manager. He's going to be helping field questions throughout the presentation. And we've got a couple of really great presentations lined up tonight, including our keynote presentation from our friends at CalFlora, Cynthia Powell and John Malpas. Before we get started, I'd like to note a couple other things. First, this webinar is being recorded, so if you really enjoy it, you can share it with your friends and your family, or you can come back and review some of the material later on. We're going to be sharing a link to the recording later this week. Also, if you're a master gardener, this webinar does count towards your continuing education credit if you're interested. And lastly, if you're interested in participating in our spring nursery survey, you'll be asked to complete a short 5-question quiz on our website based on the content of this webinar. And while that quiz isn't meant to be difficult, but merely to make sure that you're familiar with the material, we just thought we'd let you know so that you're aware. So here on the screen is an agenda of what we're going to cover. We've broken up the webinar into 4 different sections. First, we'll cover the basics. What are invasive plants and why do we care? Then we'll hear from our keynote speakers, John and Cynthia, who will lead us through how to use CalFlora's Observer Pro phone app and the CalFlora website. And following their presentation, we'll connect their data collection efforts in the field to our data collection efforts in the nursery industry, and provide information on how to participate in the 2015 Spring Nursery Survey. And finally, we'll have a short question and answer section in which we'll answer any questions you might have. Okay, let's begin by explaining what invasive plants are, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So by definition, invasive plants are foreign or not native to an area. That being said, keep in mind that not all foreign plants are invasive. And also, just because a plant is invasive in a certain climate zone, like California's South Coast, that doesn't necessarily make it invasive in others, like the Sierra Nevada or the Central Valley. But where they are invasive, these plants spread on their own, meaning that they don't need irrigation, soil amendments, or tillage in order to thrive. And by spreading on their own, invasive plants cause measurable harm, whether it's financial, environmental, or to human health. But you're probably wondering, how do invasive plants actually cause harm? What does that actually mean? Well, let's actually take a look at some examples. From an ecological perspective, invasive plants will often move in and entirely take over an area, crowding out existing plants and the wildlife that rely on them. This picture you see here on the screen shows a coastal dune that has been completely covered by Carpobrotus sedulus, highway ice plant. You can see it's made it awfully difficult for anything else to grow here. And this doesn't just affect the native plants. For example, coastal dunes form the most important nesting habitat for the western snowy plover. And the small shorebird shown in the left-hand side of the screen here, as a result of habitat losses like this one, the western snowy plover is actually now endangered. Invasive plants can also alter the soil composition in environments. The Scotch brooms you see on the left are nitrogen fixers, meaning that they deposit nitrogen into the soil. This makes it easier for other invasives to invade and harder for natives to reestablish. Salt cedar, Tamarix ramosissima, in the middle, takes up lots of water and deposits salt into the ground, inhibiting other plants' growth. And blue gum eucalyptus, on the right, Eucalyptus globulus, has toxins in its leaves that, when they decompose on the forest floor, prevent the growth of other plants in the understory. Invasives can also alter hydrology, or the water cycle in the region. This picture you see on the screen is actually, it's not a meadow, but it's actually a stream in the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta that has been completely taken over by water hyacinth. And this not only reduces the flow of water and makes it difficult for terrestrial wildlife to access it, but it also destroys the aquatic wildlife underneath by reducing oxygen and sunlight levels. And these water hyacinth invasions also have a significant economic impact on shipping and recreational boating and water storage. What about some of the other economic impacts? For example, several invasive plants in California are highly flammable and can increase fire intensity, causing fires to burn bigger, hotter, and longer. These fires are expensive to control, and they can cause significant damage to private property and public infrastructure. And when invasive plants grow on croplands, they're actually considered weeds. And as the top agricultural state in the country, a lot of money is spent controlling these weeds, which result in lost agricultural yields and lowered land values. And you can see the expression on this fellow's face is not too happy. You can just imagine having a field full of pampas grass like that. Altogether, invasive plants like these are very difficult and expensive to control, and each year, California spends over $80 million monitoring, mapping, and controlling invasive plants like these. But keep in mind that this doesn't take into account some of the harder to calculate costs, and it's actually likely much higher. So here's a summary table of the varied and significant impacts of invasive plants. And while this list isn't exhaustive, it's part of why we think this issue is so important. But at this point, you're probably asking yourself, how did all these plants get here in the first place? If we're going to address this problem, we need to understand where they're coming from. Well, in 2003, a University of California study revealed that almost half of all invasive plants in California were introduced through the horticultural industry. And that being said, it's important to note that many invasive plants, like pampas grass, were introduced over 100 years ago, before their invasive tendencies were known. And this isn't about pointing fingers at the industry, but rather this showed us how important it is to partner with the industry going forward. Only a small percentage of the ornamental plants we use in gardening and landscaping today actually become invasive. And while the majority of these are no longer sold, some of them continue to be grown for horticultural uses today. And because of this, we realized that we needed to work across the horticultural industry and educate all sides of the supply chain, whether it's the plant propagators, the plant growers, the nurseries and garden centers you all are visiting, and the gardeners who are planting things in their gardens. And this, in essence, is the motivation for why the PlantRight program was started. Now, to give you a bit of background on PlantRight, PlantRight is a project that's run by the nonprofit Sustainable Conservation. Sustainable conservation helps California thrive by uniting people to solve the toughest challenges facing our land, air, and water. We bring together businesses, landowners, and government to steward the resources that we all depend on in ways that make economic sense. And we do this because we believe that finding common ground is the best way to protect California's resources. Now, we recognize the importance of the issue of invasive plants, and in 2005, we brought together a diverse alliance of leaders from these 4 sectors that you see on the screen. And together, these leaders created the PlantRight program to tackle this issue in a way that's collaborative, voluntary, and science-based. And these diverse stakeholders, they remain really highly involved in our program to this day as our steering committee, and they meet with us about once a quarter to help guide our work. So at a high level, PlantRight partners with plant growers, retailers, professional gardeners, and landscapers to stop the sale of invasive plants and in their place promote similar, safer alternatives. Now, what have we been up to since 2005? Well, after convening our steering committee, we went to work developing a regional plant list to help identify which plants are the biggest concerns and where they're problematic. This list was actually originally based on the more exhaustive California Invasive Plant Council, or Cal-IPSI list, but it was pared down to focus on the most commonly sold invasive garden plants gardeners might encounter in nurseries and garden centers. And because PlantRight's all about coaching the do's instead of the don'ts, we've identified more than 50 beautiful alternative plants that work really well in place of these invasives. And to complement this list, we've been conducting outreach and education through a variety of free programs. Currently, there are 4 main tiers of our program, as shown here on the screen. And while I don't have enough time to go in depth into each of these, besides, of course, the nursery survey down the bottom, we invite you to go onto our website. We've got a number of great pages that explain what these programs entail and how you can get involved. So I'm really excited now to introduce our keynote speakers, John and Cynthia, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them before they tell you about CalFlora's Observer Pro phone app and the CalFlora website. Cynthia Powell, who is CalFlora's project manager, she graduated with her Master's in Science in Geographic Information Systems, GIS, in 2010 after forecasting the Mokelumne River water supply based on MODIS remote sensing snowpack images. Since then, she's been examining what was under that snow, plants, ever since. And just to give you a snapshot, she's conducted mapping and ecological modeling of current and future invasive plant ranges based on environmental variables and global climate models. John, sorry, I wasn't showing these photos, but our two lovely keynote speakers on the screen. John Malpas is the technical lead at CalFlora. He lives in Sebastopol with his family and 11 chickens, one for each year he's been at CalFlora. John formerly worked at AT&T Bell Labs and Nomura Securities, and he has 2 decades of experience wrangling websites and many software technologies, his favorite being Java. In his spare time, he's a native plant gardener. So John and Cynthia, I'm going to pass the presenter privileges over to you now. And without further ado, we will start the second part.
There, how about now?
We can hear you. All right, yeah, hi Cynthia.
Good. Hi.
I just passed you the presenter privileges. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks you guys. And thanks everybody who's listening. And
yeah, we've got a really great turnout.
Oh yeah, it looked like I was scrolling through all the people. Some of them you can see they have video on and some don't, but it's pretty exciting.
What you'll want to do, Cynthia, is click that middle tab up at the top of the screen that says CalFlora.
Oh, this one. Okay, got it.
All right, yeah,
Great.
we can see the screen, and you can just walk us through it. Thanks.
Okay. So thanks for the introduction. John is on the line, and I'm Cynthia, and we're going to talk about using our phone app called Observer Pro and also the CalFlora website. I know some of you may be smartphone savvy and interested in learning about it, and some of you may not be very interested in that. So in total, we're only going to talk for about 20 minutes, and we'll only spend about 10 minutes on the smartphone stuff. And even if you're not that interested in smartphones, it's still pretty cool. These are some of our funders that I always like to thank. And then basics about CalFlora. We're a nonprofit. Our database has over 10,000 native and introduced species. That's all the plant species we know about in the state of California. Over 2 million plant location observations, including points, lines, and polygons. Originally, the CalFlora database just had points, and then in the past 4 or 5 years, we've been adding, and you, data contributors, have been adding lines and polygons. Over 30,000 relationships between old and new plant names. That's a pretty big deal, as I'm sure most of you know. When the plant name changes, when you use the CalFlora website, you can search by an old name, by a new name, and they're all what we call crosswalk together so that you can find the plant you're looking for. Over 300,000 plant photos, a lot of them are from CalPhotos, and over 36,000 unique e-visitors each month, or 1,200 a day. We just celebrated our 20th birthday. Exciting, that was 2014. Now, if you'd like to try out Observer Pro, it's free. It's only available on Androids. We do have an iPhone, very simple data collection tool called Observer that you can get. It's also free. But Observer Pro is the one I'm going to be talking about for the next little while. In Observer Pro, we realized as we talked to more and more agencies and people collecting plant data that everybody really needs different fields depending on who they are, what they're interested in. where their funding comes from, where they live in California. So we created an app where you decide what fields you want to collect data. This is the plant name and then 2 pictures. You could have 3 pictures, 4 pictures, 5 pictures. I like 2. I do 1 close-up and then 1 of the community. You choose also your location fields, and that would include the address if you wanted to include an address. Nobody can see my mouse, right? I don't have a pointer. Is that right, Greg and Chris?
Yeah, that looks good to us. I'm not seeing any pointers.
If you go to the top left side of the screen, there's something that says annotate, the little marker icon, and you might be able to use that if you'd like to have a pointer.
Oh, cool. Oh, I don't think, okay. Well, it's okay. Oh, I got it. Do you guys see that? Maybe not. Okay, anyways, I won't do that. I won't play with that right now. You choose your assessment information. Now, this is designed for invasive plants. This is, we're talking today about invasive plants. You don't have to use this app or this tool for invasive plants only, but organization A, needs to know number of plants in, for instance, their polygon, percent cover, what the distribution is, the phenology of the plant, the growth area, and the infested area. Organization B is more needs more simple data collection, just number of plants, phenology, and distribution. Organization C has some asterisks next to what they collect, and that means that those for their crew out in the field are mandatory. They have to collect status. They have to collect, that's if it's invasive or not, that's the status. What the percent cover is, number of plants is not mandatory, distribution, and phenology. Treatment fields, again, mostly for invasive plants. Some organizations like Organization B really need a lot of treatment fields, and Organization A needed fewer than that. So depending on who you are and what you need, we can set up those fields for you on this app. And if you go into the app and just get the Observer Pro off Google Play and use it, we have 2 forms, one simple and one advanced with some of these fields, not the treatment fields, but the other fields for you to try out and test and see what you need and what works for you, simple or advanced. This is what the app looks like once you install it on your phone. You log in using your CalFlora logon, and then if you want to be independent, you can be independent if you have an organization that you're working with and you're part of a group where you share private treatment data or private information. You can log in as a specific organization. You can have multiple projects, and each of the projects you can collect either with the same form, the same fields, like I was just demonstrating a few slides ago, or different ones. And then we have, this is the fascinating offline map cache. So if you're away from Wi-Fi, out in the field, you don't even need a phone with a data plan, and you don't have any satellite connection, you can still see where you are on the offline map. And we create those for you, so it's, it would take up too much space through the entire state of California, but we do piece by piece, and then you load them onto your phone as you need them. Or tablet. Some people use tablets because they're a little bigger, easier to look at in the field. Here's an example of the offline maps. They say ready. When you check it, when it's ready, it says ready, and then you can go out in the field. This is in Marin County, and see this offline map cache in the background as you're collecting your data. You start to type in your plant name, and then ARUN, these are some options. You pick the one that you want, you say okay. You can search by scientific name and all plants in the CalFlora database. That's all over 10,000 plant names. Or you can search by common name. So there's a little drop down here, scientific or common. You can search by all plants, recent plants, or Mount Tam. This is just a plant list that we have. You could draw polygons if you want to. You can walk around the polygon and drop your vertices as you walk, or you can draw it remotely, looking over at the ridge. You choose if you want to draw a point, a line, or a polygon. And this is that offline map cache that I told you about in the background. So you don't need a data plan at all. You don't need Wi-Fi in the field. You do need Wi-Fi before you go to log in using your CalFlora login, which is free if you don't already have a CalFlora login, and download your map caches. And you do need Wi-Fi when you get back to upload your observations to the CalFlora database. You can also, I'm not going to go into details about this, but you can come back year after year and collect assessments on the data that you had from the year before and say how the polygon grew or how it shrank or how the percent cover changed. And you can see change, like this is a patch of Arundo changing over time. And you can look at all those polygons on top of each other if you want to. That's as far into that as I'm going to go. Satellites, you can use a Bluetooth GPS if you're down in a canyon or if you're somewhere with a lot of tree canopy and you don't have good connection to satellites to get your GPS point. We have this Bluetooth GPS puck connector thing. And I'm not going to talk anymore about that. There they are. And you can download your results once you upload into the CalFlora website. Hopefully all of you, or at least most of you, are pretty familiar with the CalFlora website. You can download your results as a CSV, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet, or basically any file format you can think of, we have available to you for downloading your records, or just looking at them on the CalFlora website on a map. You can do that too. John, take it away. Oh, I have to pass the ball to John. Hold on. Greg or Chris, can you guys do that?
Hi, Cynthia. Yeah, I think that you're the one who has to pass that ball to John.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is unmute John real quick.
Great. I'm going to take this.
All right, John, can you hear us?
Yeah.
I got it to Sandra. Uh-oh, I shouldn't have done that. Sandra, I was trying to get it farther down to John. I don't like the way these are. It's not a list, it's a little box. I'm having trouble getting to John.
It's telling me I'm the presenter.
Oh, good.
I
did it, or somebody did it. Great.
Am I really the presenter? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Okay.
Yeah. Take it away.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about some features of CalFlora that have come in the past couple of years. The idea is, sometimes I've seen a place where they'll recommend native plants, and native plants have been kind of a fad recently. And the abstract recommendation of a bunch of native plants isn't always that good because it really depends on where you live, which native plants are going to do well. So we have an attempt, it's a work in progress, to first of all, collect the abstract characteristics or tolerances of various native plants, and then to juxtapose that with a particular location and say whether the plant is going to be inside of its tolerances or outside of its tolerances. So here is an interesting ceanothus that kind of likes the Southern California coast, green bark ceanothus. And this is just our taxon report page. And then if there's a plant characteristics link right above the little sundial. So I'm going to go ahead as if I press that. So on the plant characteristics page, it'll say that, with these abstract tolerances, what elevations it grows at, its range of annual precipitation, wet season, temperature range, meaning how high and how low. A coastal plant is going to have a smaller temperature range that it tolerates than, say, a Sierra plant, and some other climate things. And there's also soil factors that come from NRCS data. So from the plant characteristics page, I can then, there's a link called location suitability. And if I click on that, here's some more stuff on plant characteristics. If we know something about if butterflies or native bees like it, it'll be there. But then clicking on location suitability, here is location suitability, and it's showing a particular location right outside the town of Orange. And this, according to the abstract characteristics anyway, indicates that this location is inside of the tolerances of this plant. So the plant might, there's lots of other things, of course, you guys are gardeners, but at least, you know, it's not going to freeze to death. It's not going to be too, it's not going to die because of too much salt in the soil or something like that. So we're getting a thumbs up for this location for greenbark ceanothus. Then, and when you use this application, basically you just click on the map approximately where you are or exactly where you are, and you'll get a little readout, a little comparison of what the particular plant wants and what the location has to offer. So here's a location, this next one,
thank you,
where on the next slide is the actual map where we'll see where this is. But this location is having a problem. For one thing, the temperature range is a little bit too big for what this plant wants. It's like 6 degrees, too much variation year-round. And then the high temperature is a little bit too hot. So where is this? Go to the next slide. Oh, so that was right in the town of San Bernardino. And on the map, you can actually see that there are some greenbark ceanothus growing nearby, but they're kind of in the foothills. There's one right in Claremont that I'm a little suspicious of, but none of them grow right down in the flatland there. So this is what this application is telling you is that you might have trouble if you tried to grow this plant at that location. And that's about it. How about we go to questions?
Hi, John. Thank you for that. I think what we'll do is, if it works for everyone, we'll kind of keep going, and you can save your questions or type them into the chat box, and we'll be logging those here, and then we'll have some time at the end to cover some of those.
Okay.
All right. So, John, if you'd like to, let's see.
Oh, I need to switch it back to you.
You know, I think I just stole it from you.
Okay, good.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, John and Cynthia. That was fantastic. It's so great to see how easy and informative and useful all of these tools are, even for, you know, everyday gardeners, people like us. I'm actually really excited. I'm going to go home and download it and play around and see what I can do here in San Francisco. Might be a good reason to get an Android. Well, now what I'm really excited to do is build on that and kind of go from the data collection efforts that CalFlora is pioneering and talk a little bit about the data that we're collecting through our annual spring nursery survey, which I expect is why a lot of you are here today, or this evening, excuse me. All right, so like I said, this last section is going to be, we're going to cover the instructions for participating in our annual spring nursery survey, and then we'll finish by having a question and answer. So earlier we covered how and why invasive plants pose a risk to natural environments, and our nursery survey, it allows us to track these plants back to their source, and it's our tool for identifying the existing invasive plants in the horticultural trade so that we can address them before they become a bigger problem out in natural environments. The survey, it acts as the program's guiding light, so it allows us to track the retail market for invasive plants in California. This, you know, it lets us know which plants are being sold, where, and by whom. And by giving us a concrete sense of what plants continue to be sold, the survey, it helps us, it provides the information that we need to update our list of invasive plants that I mentioned earlier. It lets us remove plants that are no longer really being sold in the industry, and it helps us add plants that are new threats as they're realized. And altogether, this helps inform our strategy for effectively engaging the retail industry, and it influences the rest of our programs. So this is a map that shows the information we collected in last year's survey. So the 2014 Spring Nursery Survey was actually our 5th annual year, and we worked with over 120 volunteers, many of whom are joining us again this year, to collect data from, as you can see, 226 stores in 35 counties around the state, which we're really excited about. And using all of that great information we collected last year, we were really excited to actually update our list of suggested alternatives for the most commonly sold invasive garden plants. If you'd like to learn more about these changes, I recommend that you head over to our website. We have this list on our website. It should be pretty easy for you to find from our homepage, and we'd love to share more information with you if you're interested. But now we're going to focus on the Spring Nursery Survey. So before we dive in, I'll give you a little bit of background on how we've structured the survey. So because of the seasonal nature of gardening and horticulture, with the timing of spring varying regionally, we've split the survey into 2 regions that each have different timing. So in Southern California, which is including and south of San Luis Obispo, Kern, and San Bernardino counties, the survey will begin at the beginning of March, on March 2nd, and it's going to run through the end of May. And that's where I'm assuming a lot of you are joining us from. Up in Northern California, which is north of those counties, north of San Luis Obispo, Kern, and San Bernardino, the survey will run from April 20th through June 21st. And this year we've randomly selected 290 stores from the thousands in the California Department of Food and Ag's online directory. And that selection process is random. We do that randomly for statistical purposes, and it's done proportionally to the population in each county. So for example, we're going to have more nurseries on our list available to survey in Los Angeles or Sacramento counties, in contrast to Glen or Sierra counties, which have lower population densities. So here we're going to go through some of the, just at a high level, the steps for participation. So first, the first step is to create an account on our website, PlantRight's.org, if you haven't done so already. And then the next step is going to be completing that short 5-question quiz that I mentioned earlier. The third step is selecting a store to survey in your region. After that, you'll want to gather up the appropriate materials, and then visit the store and collect any data and photos. Then submit those photos back on the website. And finally, provide us with feedback on your experience. And this last part's optional, but we definitely encourage it. It's always great for us to hear your input and suggestions for improving our survey. It's good to note that all these steps are actually, you can do all of these on our website, except, of course, for visiting the nursery. So here's a screenshot of our website on the screen. And the first thing you want to do on the website is log in, or if you have an account, or create a new account if you don't have one. So once you have that account, you can log in using the email and password box here in the lower left-hand corner. If you have an account, but you don't remember your username or your password, you can click the Request New Password link to have that access info sent to your email. And if you don't have an account, you'll want to click on this new Create New Account button down in the lower left-hand corner. And then you'll want to follow these instructions on the next page to create a Spring Survey volunteer account. There's a little bit of text in the middle of that page that explains what it entails. You want to click that button, and then after inputting all of your information, you'll have an account. Now, after logging in, your next step, the Spring Survey tab will actually appear in the menu, which you can see here on the left-hand side of the page. And after you log in, you want to take that short 5-question quiz by clicking the link that's marked by this arrow. These questions are, like I said earlier, designed to be straightforward and easy, and they simply exist to make sure that you've viewed the webinar and you're familiar with the material. And to pass, you must answer at least 4 out of the 5 questions correctly, but you're going to be able to take that quiz more than once. And if it's helpful, you can always review this video. There's going to be a recording available on our website. Now, after passing that quiz, you'll be taken to the instructions page, which really can serve as your home base on our website. You can access it through the instructions link in the sidebar, as shown by this arrow. And this page actually walks you through each stage of the survey process, and it includes links to all of the relevant materials that you'll also need. You can also find these materials in the Survey Materials link, also in the sidebar. Now you'll see in this screenshot, your first step is going to be to select a store to survey. You can access this list again through the sidebar, shown by the arrow here, or through the link in the instructions text. Back to the timing. So the nurseries will actually become available to sign up for on our website at noon, a week from today actually, on March 2nd, Monday at noon for Southern California. And up in Northern California, their list of nurseries is going to be available on April 20th. And after they're posted, the nursery list page, will look a little bit like this. And to make it a little bit easier for you to find stores near you, you can sort these stores by county, which I've circled up there. Once you find a store that you'd like to survey, you can click the text, the right-hand side of the screen, where it says Survey this nursery. And this will take you to a new page that asks if you're sure you'd like to survey this nursery. And after you click yes, a few things will happen. You'll get a confirmation email from our system with information about that store. And the store is going to actually drop off the list of available nurseries, so we don't have multiple volunteers signing up for the same store. If you'd like to see information about the nurseries that you've signed up for, you can just, at any time, you can click the My Nurseries page in the link in the sidebar here, which I've circled, where all the nurseries that you've claimed will show up. Now, if for some reason you're unable to conduct your survey and you need to unclaim your store, you can do that on the My Nurseries page by clicking that individual store that you want to unclaim and then clicking the Unclaim This Nursery link at the bottom of the page. All right, so what happens if you go to this nursery list and you find that there is no stores left? If that's the case, we recommend you get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to help you find a store or two that will work well for you. In many cases, there could be stores in neighboring counties that would also work pretty well for you. Perhaps you're already planning a trip, or you live relatively close to a county border and there's a store that's not too far out of the way. And sometimes that's just a really nice way for counties with extra volunteers to help counties with fewer. The only thing we ask if you are interested in surveying a store outside your county is that we recommend you wait about 2 weeks after the stores become available before you sign up, and that's just to allow volunteers in that county to do so if they're interested. All right, so you've chosen a nursery. Your next step is going to be to gather up the materials you need. And these include the instructions checklist, the survey form, the plant ID guide, and the explanation sheets. All these materials are available on our website, found through the survey materials link, as well as on the instructions page, like I said earlier. And we recommend that you print these with you and take them with you to your store when you conduct your survey. And specifically for the plant ID guide, because it has pictures of those plants, we recommend you print that in color. If you're unable to print any of these, just let us know and we'd be happy to mail them to you. So here on the screen is a screenshot of the instructions checklist. It's very similar to that instructions page on our website, but we recommend you take it with you just in case you don't have an internet connection and you have some questions while you're at the store. This here is the survey form. It includes each of the plants on our survey, and it has a space for each item of information we'd like you to collect. It's actually organized by growth type, as I've highlighted here in orange with the grasses you can see on the left. And it includes space for basic information like the date and your name up at the top. And I'd like to highlight specifically this space for store code. We identify the store by a code rather than by name, just to protect the store's identity since we're conducting the survey in best faith with the industry. There's also a space for additional information on how long it took you to conduct the survey and what the store's response was if it had one, right there in the middle. I'd also like to highlight this space for cultivar name and or plants in the same genus. A plant may have a cultivar name when it is a variety of an existing plant species, and these cultivar names are commonly in single quotations. So, for example, there could be a cultivar of pampas grass, Cordaderia celoana, ivory feathers, and they would usually have that in single quotations. We ask that you record that information in this column, along with the names of any other plants that you find in the same genus as plants on our list, like different types of brooms, like sweet broom, or different pennisedums. I'd like to make a special note about a new plant that we're actually including on our survey for the first time this year, Osteospermum fruticosum, which has a large number of cultivars in the industry. If you find a large number of these at the store during your survey, just list as many of them as you can in this section, or in this section for notes at the bottom of the back page. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when you go to the store is that each of these stores is going to have completely different signage. And we might not always have all the information available to us, like scientific names on the labels or the name of the grower, etc., that we want. So with that in mind, we're simply asking that you do the best you can and record all the information that's available to you. Here on the screen, we've got the plant ID guide that I mentioned earlier with pictures of each of the plants on our survey. And these plants often look pretty different in the stores than they do in the wild, especially depending on the time of year. And so to help you identify the plants, we've included an extra inset photograph for many of them, like these that you can see here, of green fountain grass, Pennisedum cetaceum, on the left, and periwinkle, Vinca major, on the right. This last material on our list is our explanation sheet, and this one's a great material. It contains background information about PlantRight, our survey, and it has some answers to some frequently asked questions, which you can use to answer questions you might encounter during your visit. And this actually leads us again to the question of how exactly should you interact with store staff? It's a great question. We do our best to conduct this survey in good faith with the nursery industry, and since the survey is not tied to any regulatory efforts and all information is kept confidential, there's really no risk to stores. And as a result, we really do welcome you to inform the stores that you're there to conduct the survey, and no disguises are necessary. If you find yourself talking to a store employee, it'd be a really good opportunity to use this explanation sheet. It has a lot of good talking points, and you can even feel free to leave it behind with the store staff if you'd like. We encourage you to refer staff to our website, plantright.org, which is also included on that explanation sheet, if they have a question that you're unsure of how to answer or they'd like to learn more. Now, if you'd prefer not to engage with the store staff, that's completely okay too. Information gathering like this in our survey, it happens in the industry, and our survey is definitely not unique. Now, if you're asked not to complete the survey by someone in the store, please respect the store's request and leave courteously. If this happens, just let us know, and we can address it on a case-by-case basis. That's actually only happened a handful of times over the past few years, but we'd like you to be prepared. And I'd like to finally remind you that the purpose of the survey is data collection. It's not outreach. So we kindly ask that you refrain from doing any kind of advocacy during your nursery visit. That being said, if you are interested in playing more of an ambassador role and engaging your favorite stores about this issue, we invite you to become part of our PlantRight Ambassador program, through which you can become an ambassador through our continuing education program. If this is interesting to you, feel free to get in touch with us, or you can visit the continuing education page on our website if you're interested. Lots of great resources on there. All right, now that you've got all your materials, your next step is going to be to visit the store. We recommend you give yourself about between 45 and 90 minutes for the survey, but how long it's actually going to take depends on the store size, the layout, and how well the plants are labeled. It's helpful to note that annuals, edibles, indoor plants, and native plants, those aren't going to show up on our survey list, so you can skip those sections entirely. All right, so say you find an invasive plant. The first thing you want to do is just record all the available information that you can find on the survey form. And then you'll want to take a photo of the plant, and we ask that you take at least 2 photos, one of the plant itself and a close-up of the plant label. And these photos are really important to us because they allow us to verify the identity of the plant. And in some cases, plants can be mislabeled. For example, this plant you see on the screen, Carex divulsa, it's actually often sold mistakenly under the name of Carex tumulacula, which is a native grass called Berkeley sedge. And given the confusion about these two, we just want you to collect all the information you see for both species. And it could be helpful for us if you took a few extra photos just to help us differentiate between them. This year, we're also asking you to take and submit photos of the cultivars that you find of the invasive plants on our list. To give you an example, let's talk about Pennisetum cetaceum green fountain grass, which is shown here on the screen. This plant has a lot of different cultivars, some of which aren't problematic, including this cultivar, Fireworks, Bunny Tails, another cultivar, this one called Fairy Tales, and this one, which is called Eaton Canyon. If you find a really large number of cultivars of Osteospermum fruticosum, for example, which you see on the screen, don't feel obligated to submit a photo for each one. You can just simply list those on the data collection form as we mentioned above. And remember, there's no need to include photos of related plants like Pennisetum orientale, which is in the same genus, Pennisetum, but it's actually a different species entirely. You can just note their presence on the data sheet. It's also worth noting that sometimes photos can be distant, blurry, or lacking in reference, which makes it really difficult for us to verify the plants. And because these photos are so critical, we'd like to emphasize the importance of taking clear photos. And it's helpful if you have a digital camera, it might be really helpful to check over your photos before you leave the store, just in case you need to take another one while you're there. And that way you wouldn't have to necessarily make an extra trip. And remember, there's no harm in taking some extra photos. For example, if you really like the layout of a store or you find some quirky installments like the ones here on the screen, really send as many photos as you want. We love seeing extra photos of you and your team. It's always great for us to see. Now, once you've finished your surveys, you'll need to get back online to submit your data on our website. So once you've logged in again, you'll see options for Submit a Survey and Upload Photos, which I've circled here. After you click the Submit a Survey tab, you'll actually see this page. It's a submission page that has fields that are identical to the survey form. You'll simply select the store you've surveyed, input your data, and then click Submit. And then after you transfer your photos from your camera to your computer, you can submit those online as well by clicking the Upload Photos tab, which I've circled here. And you can choose which photos you upload by clicking the Photo button, which is in this screenshot right below the photo that you see in the middle of the screen. In the description field of that photo, it'd be really helpful for you to put the plant name and whether it's the plant or the tag. And there's a little description that walks you through that on this page. Now, after you submit the results, you'll receive a confirmation email from our system, which includes a link to this voluntary feedback questionnaire. And like I said earlier in the presentation, this is actually it's voluntary, but it's always great for us to have your feedback, and we use it to improve the survey each year. And just like that, you're finished. Now, if you're a Master Gardener, which I assume a lot of you are, don't forget to log your volunteer service and your continuing education hours online through the Master Gardener VMS system. And that's it. Of course, if you have a really great time during your survey and you're interested in doing more, or maybe taking a friend or visiting a new nursery that you haven't been to before, you can always go back to that list and see if there are any more on the list that are available. Otherwise, you can write us an email and say how much fun you had or get in touch. Now that we've finished, I'm going to check over and see if anyone has any questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chris.
we're still here. We would love questions.
Great, yeah. Well, you did get one during your presentation, and that was a question from Kira Olson about whether there's an iOS app in development, or in other words, an iPhone or an iPad application for Observer or Observer Pro.
Thanks, Kira. That's the $80,000 question. That's about how much it would cost to develop. We would love to develop an iOS version of this Android app, Observer Pro, and 50% or more than 50% of the population of people who have smartphones have iPhone. So that would be great. Now, in the meanwhile, before we've started, it's actually 100,000. We've rounded up 20,000 so far. So before we get the entire amount, and it's going to happen, it's just a matter of time, I would recommend in the meanwhile using your iOS phone and getting just the Observer app from the iTunes store. And that's also free. And just, it's very simple. Oh, was somebody saying something? Okay, so it's very simple. It's plant, like species, the date is automatically recorded, the observer being used since you're logged in is automatically recorded, and then the location, and you upload that into the CalFlora database. And once it's in the CalFlora database, you can edit it to your heart's content, adding in all the fields that you didn't have when you were out in the field with your phone, you know, that you wish that you could have collected, but you didn't have the Android app going. And yeah, eventually we'd love to, well, we will be developing that. And if you know of funding sources, what we're thinking about is we have about 20,000 so far, and we're putting together the rest. If you know of places we should go to look for that funding, please let me know.
Great, thank you, Cynthia. There's another question that actually came in for you and for John, asking about the occurrence data that shows up in CalFlora with the map of California, and does it show plant specimens that are found in the wild or in urban areas or in both?
That's another great question. We're dealing with wild plants in California. That's our database. Now, if there is a location on the CalFlora website where when you're logging data, you can say this is cultivated, and if you check that box, you can still log data for cultivated plants, and people who are searching the CalFlora database can mostly don't want that information, so they don't get it. But if you want to have, John, can you pick this up? If you want to have the cultivated plants only, can you do that? I don't even know. I've never tried it.
Yeah, there's not very much support for searching for cultivated plants. So, some people do record it, like restoration projects and stuff like that, and they kind of use it personally or they use it inside their group. But the default searches that you get on CalFlora are all of wild plants. Sometimes something sneaks through. You know, like when I was talking earlier, I said I was suspicious of that Claremont one. Well, you know, because sometimes cultivated plant sneaks through and we can't tell. But if you ever see anything like that, write to support and we'll see what we can do about it.
Well, or you can make a comment on it's somebody else's data point, and you can write in anybody else's plant observation in CalFlora. You can make a comment and say, I don't think you ID'd it correctly. I think it might be this other species, or could you send more pictures, or if you think it's cultivated, like John could go ahead and make a comment on that one. What was it, near Claremont?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that then the person who logs the data into our library receives notification that somebody has a question about that point, and we can look into it farther that way too.
Yeah.
Okay. This is Chris again. There's a couple other questions related to the survey that I want to quickly get to. There's a number of them. There's a request to go through the how to create an account steps again, which I'll be happy to show. There's a quick question for the CalFlora folks, just asking what the exact name of the Observer app is on iTunes.
It's called The Observer.
But it's hard to find on iTunes, so I would recommend actually going to the CalFlora, I don't know why it's hard to find, but going to the CalFlora website and go to our news section and go to the phones and find the link to the Observer iOS app. That way, if you can't find it, just going to iTunes.
Yeah, on iTunes, there was when it was first released for the couple of years, you could find it by searching for CalFlora or Observer, but that actually doesn't work anymore for no reason. Cynically, I think it's because we're not giving Apple enough money, but it's very hard to find it on iTunes.
Interesting. Well,
yeah. Is that something could I paste that link into our chat for everybody?
Yeah, that would be fine. Just make sure you send it to everyone. There's a little option to send to everyone.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
And we can
okay,
also
I'll
share
work on that. Yeah.
We can also share that
great.
after this webinar.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. There's a quick question that was, there are a couple. One volunteer asks, are volunteers only supposed to sign up for nurseries that are in close proximity to us, or do you not want us to hog them? I would say if you are in a county that has a number of volunteers that you know are also participating, this also kind of gets to the question of how many surveys does one volunteer typically do. The way we've estimated it in the past, we typically allocate about one volunteer for every nursery that we want to have surveyed. So most volunteers do between 1 and 2 surveys. We have a few volunteers who go above and beyond and do as many as 7. I think that was the highest number last year. And if you're worried about hogging all of the nurseries in your area, I would recommend maybe grabbing 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of them and maybe reaching out to the other folks in your area. If you're part of the Master Gardener community, it might be easy to get in touch with a group. Otherwise, if you're not in the Master Gardener community, you could reach out to me and we could look at how many nurseries there are, and if you're interested in surveying more, we could always add a couple more to our list. That's always easy for us to do as well.
Chris, what happens when somebody goes to the website and there are no more nurseries left in their county?
That's a good question. Thanks for asking, Greg. So if there are no more nurseries in your county on the nursery list, you can do 2 things. So you can get in touch with me and ask if there are any other nurseries that we could add to our list, or you could go and search in neighboring counties and see if there are any nurseries that would be relatively convenient for you to survey. That's always good because sometimes we'll have certain counties that have a large number of volunteers and a shortage of stores, with a neighboring county that has a number of stores that could really use some help. And because this group is joining us from Southern California, I'll note that Los Angeles County historically has had the largest number of stores. And while it's probably not the most convenient for a lot of folks, especially if you're out in the far east of Riverside or San Bernardino counties, there's always going to be extra stores in Los Angeles that you're welcome to help out and survey. I hope that helped answer those questions. There was another question about the flower color, specifically with Vinca major. And should volunteers collect information about pink Vinca major, for example? We do ask that you collect information for all plants that are in that species. With pink Vinca major and the variegated Vinca major, for example, we're under the impression that those aren't invasive issues, but we'd still be very interested to have that information on where they are being sold and at what prevalence. So we still do recommend that you collect that information and take some photos and submit them along with your data, and that'd be really helpful for us.
And this is Greg with PlantRight. I do want to note that there is some question about the variegated version of Vinca major periwinkle, that it may revert from variegated back to its regular expression. And so there's potential that that actually could be invasive, but it's a little bit, it's still a question that's out there.
Yeah. I mean, if you're ever uncertain, really feel free to reach out. You can send me an email or you could give me a call. I'm always happy to chat. There was a question that a volunteer wanted me to go through the steps for creating an account again on our website, and I'm sorry, I kind of flew through this during the presentation, even though it's arguably the most important part. So here on the screen you should see there's a link down at the bottom left-hand side of the screen that says Create New Account, where that arrow is pointing to. It's right directly underneath the login box. So once you click that link, it's going to take you to this page. and you can choose, on this page you'll choose what account you want to create. We have a retail nursery partnership, so we have retail stores actually signing up to create accounts on our website, and we also have a continuing education program, so we have those separate accounts as well. What you'll want to do is select the account in the middle titled Spring Survey Volunteers and create that type of account. And if you do have any issues, if the website's not working for you or you're a little bit confused on where to go next, send me an email or reach out, and I'd be happy to walk you through it. I'm just now realizing that it's actually past 8:30, so I want to just make that known to everyone. It's been a pleasure having everyone on the call. I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes and answer a couple more questions, but I also want to be sensitive of everyone's time. So there's a couple more questions that have come in that I'll try to answer. There's a really good question from Kira who asks if wholesale or nurseries that are geared more towards landscape professionals, wholesale nurseries, are those also included in the survey, or is it only retail locations that are open to the public? Our nursery survey focuses on retail locations, mainly places that are open to the public. If a wholesale nursery does have a retail branch and it is open to the public, it could be included on our survey. But the reason we focus on retail instead of the wholesalers is so that we aren't double counting plants. For example, if there's a wholesaler and they're growing a plant, and then they end up selling that plant to a nursery, and there's a volunteer that goes to that wholesaler, counts that plant there, and then there's another volunteer who goes to the retail location and counts that plant there, we would end up counting the same plant twice. So we've just decided to take that one snapshot of the retail locations. I think that that's a pretty accurate way for us to paint a picture. Barbara asked if you could suggest nurseries to add to the list. That's also a really good question. You can definitely suggest nurseries. The way our nursery list is selected is done randomly. So a lot of the time it's not really up to us which are next in line down the list. And it gets a little bit complicated, but if there is a nursery that you'd recommend we survey or add to our list, let me know, and in most cases it will work out for us to add that to our list. It's always better for us to have more data rather than less. I'd like to just thank everyone again. Thank you, Cynthia and John, for participating and staying on a couple extra minutes here. Really appreciate it. It was great to have you here. And thank you to all the volunteers who've joined us. I'm really looking forward to working with you this year, and we really couldn't do this without you. So from the bottom of our hearts here at PlantRight, we thank you. And look for an email from me shortly. I'm going to be sharing the recording in the next couple days, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much.